Hello, party people, and welcome to the Secrets of a Witch podcast with me, Sabrina Scott, where I talk all about life, love, healing, humanity, inner peace, witchcraft, tarot, spirituality, mediumship, and everything in between. I hope everyone is doing amazing. I can't believe the summer is almost over. We're like halfway through the month of August, which is shocking. Like, how did that happen? The time goes by so quickly. Anyway, I want to do a really quick shout out for my spiritual September offering. So I'm actually so fucking stoked for this. It is a riff off of my Magic May group texting experience where I gave a little magical prompt every single day for an entire month. And it was all about witchcraft and magic. And for September, I want to do something a little bit different. There still will be a prompt every single day. There still will be like a bunch of communal kind of community conversations on this group chat space. But I want to shift the focus from witchcraft and magic to the spiritual. So what the fuck does that mean? Because obviously they're all so linked. All of this stuff is incredibly linked. But I want to switch from magical witchcraft prompts to talking more about belief, cosmology, gods, goddesses, spirits, spiritual connection. What does it mean to be spiritually connected? So for me, this is like diving kind of to the core of what we need to figure out kind of before we really dive into magic, right? And I do see a lot of people trying to do magic and flailing around and not really getting many results. And sometimes that is because they haven't done this foundational spiritual work before diving into magic. Oftentimes people haven't done that work to figure out, what do I believe and why do I believe it? And all of this is why the first module, actually I call it module 0 of my Magic Without Bullshit gigantic mega course, is called Belief and Cosmology. And it's an incredibly in-depth module. So of course, the Spiritual September is not going to be a replacement for that. It's just a little mini group conversation experience that will get your gears moving if you haven't thought too much about it. But for me, I start off my Magic Without Bullshit course all about this because it is foundational to all of magic and all of witchcraft and all of that, whether you're doing kind of high magic or whether you're doing intuitive folk magic. If you don't know who or what you believe in and why, it can be really hard to petition spiritual beings and build relationships with a spiritual team, right? And so I have seen a lot of people's rituals and magic fail and just like flop like a deflated balloon because they haven't done that introspection and that work to figure out what the fuck is it that they believe, right? So I highly recommend joining the Spiritual September group chat experience where, again, I'm going to be posting an activity, a prompt for reflection, some photos every single day to inspire you to connect more deeply with your spiritual practice, with your spirituality, with your unique belief system, based on you, your unique history, your unique heritage. And so one of the things that I think gets left out of a lot of spiritual spaces, and a lot of witchy spaces in particular, is this belief-related type of stuff, right? Everyone's talking about do this, do that, like use this herb, like chant 3 times and then clap your hands. And like no one's talking about like, wait, hold on. Let's take a step back and figure out what are spirits. What do we even believe in? Are we an animist? Are we a hard polytheist? Are we a soft polytheist? Or maybe we're a monotheist. Maybe we're a spiritual atheist, right? So we're going to dive into all of that in a really fun, easy to do, accessible, everyday group text experience on Telegram. So if you don't know Telegram, it's kind of like WhatsApp, but what's different about it is you can pin posts. So as the admin, I'll be able to pin all of the prompts for every single day. And if you miss a day or skip a day or forget your phone somewhere and then come back to it, you'll be able to just scroll through all the prompts without having to read all the conversation if you don't want to. So basically, it is super fun. So you can learn more information about that at sabrinamscott.com/sept, S-E-P-T. So that's just like the short version of September. So do check it out. If you've got any questions about that, if you're not too sure if it's a good fit for you, honestly, I think it's pretty much a good fit for everybody. But if you do have any questions about it, feel free to pop me an email, ceo@sabrinamscott.com, and I am more than happy to help you out about that. Okay, so let's launch into today's topic. And I had to give it a second thought of do I really want to make a podcast episode about this topic today? But you know what? I was like, this is going to be a great opportunity for people to learn something. And so that is okay. So what I wanted to do on today's episode is actually address a hate review that this podcast got. And before you guys are like, oh my God, I don't do drama, I'm just gonna stop listening. Hold on. There's a reason why I'm addressing this review in particular. And I think it's the reason I'm even talking about this, usually I just ignore bad reviews. I just honestly don't care. But this one is so hilarious and so interesting. And I think that it betrays a lot of secret beliefs that a lot of people don't realize they have. And it's these secret beliefs that hold people back and keep them miserable. So if I can use this hilariously bad review as a learning lesson for everybody, then that is what I wanted to do today. So, okay, this is a pretty recent review, and it is just fucking cracking me up. I could not stop laughing when I read this, and if you guys know me, you will know that I, haters don't faze me at all. It really, doesn't hurt my feelings. It doesn't bother me. To me, it says more about the person writing that than it does me. And so, okay, here's the review. I'm going to read it to you guys, and then we're going to break it down. So, the title of the review is, can't get past the Valley Girl accent. And here is the review. So it's not that long. So here it is. Came here after reading Sabrina Scott's Witchbody. It completely changed my understanding of magic as animism, ecology, and Donna Haraway-inspired embodied wisdom. After listening to the podcast, I have to wonder if these are even the same people. I find myself wondering if the person who does this podcast is even capable of writing something like Witchbody. I admit it's really hard to take someone seriously who talks with a Valley Girl accent, but I tried to set that aside and listen to the substance, but there really isn't any. Where is the author of Witchbody? So, okay, I find this so funny, and I love this review. I kind of want to print this on a shirt or put it on my wall or something. So I just find it hilarious. So let me break this down, right? So I find this so fascinating. And so for those of you guys who don't know, so my book, Witchbody, is my first book. It is a graphic novel that I wrote and illustrated and designed, and I self-published it, and then it won awards and shit, and then it got picked up by Wiser, which is one of the most big English language, occult witchy publishers, and that is my cat shaking, so I'm sorry you heard his cute little collar shaking. How cute. Anyway, so this book kind of launched my career in a lot of ways, and it was a master's thesis, actually, in an environmental studies department with a focus on environment education. And so the book really is, if you guys haven't read it, it is my kind of manifesto about what witchcraft is, which is a lot of things. But as you guys know, if you know me, it is about relationship building. It is about mutualism. It is about different beings co-acting together. And it is also about understanding and embracing the agency of non-human beings, right? So the book is very philosophical. The book is very academic. The book is I'm incredibly proud of it. And it is, yes, an academic piece of writing that is also accessible outside of the academy. And it's gotten a lot of adoption in non-academic circles as well, obviously. And yeah, I'm like really proud of it. At the same time, it's like, do I always speak in academia-ese? Like, no, I don't. And I think most people don't, right? Like, the academics that I know, and for those of you who don't know, I am working on finishing my PhD right now. A lot of the academics that I know, we're just so sick and bored of like virtue signaling in terms of intelligence, right? And so what I think is so interesting about this review, and part of what I wanted to talk about, is that this review, and like people who think this way, they can't accept the plurality of the world, right? And they can't accept the plurality of the individual, which I think is fascinating. And so what my book is actually about, in many ways, is about plurality. It is about difference. It is about unintelligibility. It is about extending ethics into and across beings and spheres of experience that we do not personally relate to or understand. Part of what my book is about how sameness should not be a prerequisite for ethical consideration, and relatability should also not be a prerequisite for ethical consideration or kindness. And so what's really interesting to me about this review is that this person can't seem to like reconcile what they seem to experience as my absolute otherness due to my accent. And there is actually something very, dare I say, classist about this review, right? And so, like, I grew up in America, you know, and so my voice is because I grew up in certain parts of America around certain communities, you know what I mean? This is just how I talk. This is not put on. This is how I talk in my everyday life, you know? And that is what it is, right? And so an accent speaks to regionality. An accent speaks to perhaps assumptions of class, assumptions of intelligence. But an accent, really all that is regional. If you really want to be incredibly literal about it. Like, obviously we can read class, we can read intelligence, all these things, like, as signifiers of all of this. But is that based in fact? Not necessarily, right? And so I find it very interesting, this idea that people who speak a certain way, who have a certain type of accent, must be dumbasses, must be idiots, must be whatever, fill in the blank, due to the accent alone. Right? And so there is this very popular phrase, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. And that is in many ways what this person is doing, which I find interesting. And like, I'm an aesthetic person. Like, I love design. I love beautiful design. But I find it like really unfortunate when people make these assumptions about someone's intelligence or whatever, simply due to accent, you know? And like, obviously I live in the most multicultural city in the world. I live in Toronto, Canada. And there's a lot of like recently migrated people here who do have, let's say, sometimes incredibly thick accents. And do sometimes people assume that these people are stupid because of their accent? Yes, they do. But is that accurate? No. Like, a lot of these folks are wildly intelligent. I would actually say like most. And so someone's accent has absolutely nothing to do with their level of intelligence. And for me, that's like a really interesting thing, right? And this also brings to mind, for me, this topic of code switching, right? Like where we kind of switch how we present ourselves and how we speak and the words that we use, depending on the context that we find ourselves in. And so in the academy, it is very normative to perform certain modalities of speech, right? We might use bigger words. We might speak more slowly. We might not use contractions. We might not use slang. We might not use a lot of lyricality in our voice. We might speak in a very monotone way in the academy. And all of that is about performance on one hand, and it's also about respectability politics. But what I'm about and what I've always been about is about bringing the academy into the vernacular. And what I mean by that is bringing some of these lofty, big ideas about philosophy and animism and ecology and blah, 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 whatever, and all these fancy theorists whose books I've read with these big-ass words. What I have always been interested in is taking that shit outside of the academy and making that accessible to everyday people who might not give a fuck about reading a 400-page book about philosophy that references like 20 other philosophers, and you will not understand the book if you haven't read those 20 other philosophers. Like, some people don't want to do that shit in their spare time. Some people have kids. Some people have other things to do. Some people work like 5 jobs. Some people just don't want to do that with their time, right? And so for me, it would be a waste of my time, my expertise, and my brain power to only speak to other people within the academy. Could I do that? Absolutely. Absolutely, right? I've spoken at probably 100 academic conferences over the course of my master's and my PhD. And I'm very good at moving in those worlds. But I also find those worlds very tepid and boring a lot of the time because they're so devoid from real life. They're so devoid and far away from people who put their hands in the dirt and get their feet dirty walking on the grass and clean up, food from their kids and their dogs and whatever. And I always want my philosophy and I always want everything that I do to feel and be lived in. And one of my problems with the academy, and one of the reasons why I don't really have too much of an interest in staying within the academy after I'm done my PhD, is because it is often elitist, because it is not lived in, because it is so disconnected from reality. A lot of academics are just living in this ivory tower, have never had a normal job in their lives and don't know people with normal jobs. And it just becomes this disconnected, abstract circle jerk that doesn't have any rootedness and grounding in day-to-day reality, right? And so part of the reason why I made my master's thesis, Witchbody, into a graphic novel and not just a written thesis, 12-point font on Microsoft Word, 200 pages to be read by my master's committee and then never read again by anyone else, it was because I felt like that would have been a fucking waste of everyone's time, including my own. And I'm all about accessibility. Could I do this entire podcast in academic language, speaking to privilege and oppression and philosophy and whatever, insert giant words here? Could I do that? Yes. But if someone is going to discount what it is I have to say due to the fact that my voice betrays where I come from and where my interests really are, then that is their loss. And so if there's anyone listening to this, who has had their intelligence discounted, denied, because you look a certain way or because you sound a certain way, my heart is with you and I'm here to high five you for being yourself in your multiplicity, right? We don't stop being from where we're from just because we step inside a university. And I'm very proud to have this voice, and I'm very proud to grow up where I grew up. I'm very proud to have been raised in Colorado. You know? And I wear that, on my head. I've got like so many like things with the Colorado flag on it and the sports teams from Colorado. And that is a big part of my identity. And there is no way in hell that I'm going to tone that down so that some random person who is judgmental can like accept me as appropriately respectable. Right? And so I think this attitude is so interesting. And like, that's why I'm talking about this today on the podcast, because this is not only about me, right? Like, this attitude is pervasive. It is so many places, right? And I think a lot of us have encountered people like this. And I do think people like this will be their own undoing because they're just fucking exhausting to be around. Because they have a one-note idea of what intelligence is and what intelligence looks like. And so this person and people like this seem to have no understanding that a person can be many things at once. You know? I always joke to people that I have a bit of an OnlyFans look right now. Like, I've got the like Instagram look, I suppose, right now. And I also am doing a PhD, and my brain has always been what it is. And there's going to be a lot of people who look at me and think that, oh my God, I bet this girl is dumb as a post because she's got big boobs. And it's like, if they want to think that, that's fine. I don't want to know anyone who thinks that way about women who look a certain way. And I also don't want to know anybody who assumes someone's intelligence based on their accent. And I highly recommend that everyone else draw that same boundary, right? Because I think the provocation of people like this is like, oh, prove it. Like, prove you're that same Sabrina Scott that wrote the philosophical book Witchbody. But it's like, no. You know what I mean? And I think we all have all these different aspects of our personality. Like, there's that book, not that book, what am I talking about? There's a song that was so popular when I grew up. Maybe you guys know it. I fucking can't remember who sang this song. But like, this song was about all these different roles of women. And someone please like send me on Instagram or on email like who sang this song. But it's like, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a child, I'm a mother, I'm a sinner, I'm a saint. It's like, that song is every woman. That song is every person. We all have all of these different notes inside us. And unfortunately, there are some people, places, whatever, where expressing the like fullness of all of these different notes is frowned upon, right? And I think a lot of people are afraid to be themselves and to show their different flavors, their different notes, their different rhythms, their different, different levels of spiciness or whatever, because people like this are going to be like, oh, but I thought you were like that. Now you're being like this. It's like, fucking get a life. Like, and I think people like this are often also denying something or some form of multiplicity within themselves as well. And I think that really is maybe one of the biggest takeaways, like when we can examine comments like this, right? Like, the line that really sticks with me is, I wonder if the person who does this podcast is even capable of writing something like Witchbody. And it's like, welcome to the real world where people can be many different things, And I imagine it must be incredibly stressful to have a pressure to be one particular version of intelligence all the time. Because, like, could I speak in academia-ese all the time? Sure. Absolutely, I could do that. But that's ultimately, to do that would be in denial of all of these other aspects of myself. And part of why I love this podcast and part of why I love my career is I can bring all of these different sides of myself into what I do. And so if I can relate this to you, the listener, what would I like you to take away from this like insane, hilarious, nasty review? I just would like to tell you, whoever you are listening, that it is completely okay and it's completely fucking awesome for you to be a very multiplicitous, pluralistic, diverse individual. It is completely okay for you to have many different notes within your personality. It is completely okay for you to sound like a valley girl, or it's completely okay for you to sound country. It's completely okay for you to sound like a redneck or a hick or whatever. It's completely okay for you to sound like you're from the hood. If that is exactly where the fuck you are from. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Own that. Own who you are and own where you're from. Our voice, our accent, how we speak is a fingerprint. Unique and beautiful. Exactly how it is. And it will betray some of who we are and where we've been. But isn't that also beautiful? And if you have anyone in your life, whether it's an internet hater or a mother-in-law or a shitty boyfriend or a jealous friend or boss, whatever, who wants you to be less of the totality and multiplicity of who you are, I would really encourage you to give whatever that person says less of your respect. You know, you don't have to listen to that kind of thing. You don't have to take this kind of criticism on side. You can decide to say, like, no. I can speak like a valley girl and I can also be doing a PhD. Or whatever your version of that is. You know, you can have like a hillbilly accent and also be a surgeon. You know? You can have a really thick accent from wherever it is you just immigrated from and be a really fucking talented engineer. And if anyone has any problem with that, then they likely have a significant problem with themselves and likely some aspect of themselves that they can't change. And there's a very long history of people changing their speech in order to be thought of as more high class or to be thought of as more respectable. There's a long history of that. And I just like have no desire to play into that at all. You know, I have no shame about who I am or where I've come from or where I've been. And I find when certain people try to shame or insult people's voice, that usually comes from folks who've got a significant degree of self-loathing and or some kind of like inner work that they just have not yet done, right? And if someone is going to write you off based on your accent, based on how you talk, that person is probably not worth knowing. Because they will always try to police you and what you do and say and how you say it using their own like weirdo system of respectability. And so there's a classist element to that. There's like to some extent a racist element to that at times. There's a lot going on with that on a lot of different levels. And so all of that to say, there is my food for thought from me to you for today. And if I can leave you guys with one invitation, it would be to give yourself some extra love. If there's any parts of how you look or how you speak or your accent that you feel insecure about, just give that part of yourself some extra love. If you've ever been judged in the way that this person just insulted and judged me, I would just like you to give yourself some extra compliments. And this type of thing, like, this doesn't really faze me at all because I've gotten to a certain level of self-assuredness and inner peace. But it took a very long time to get here. And this type of comment totally would have upset me maybe like, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so I know everyone's journey with receiving this type of insult is going to be really different and happening at different paces. And, think about it. Like, how would you feel if someone sent you this? And notice what triggers come up, if any do, and then see that as a data point where you're like, okay, this is where I need to heal a woundedness. Right? And I think that can be a really good thing to do. So I'm going to leave you with that, my friends. It's not just one person listening to this podcast. There's a lot of people listening to this podcast, actually. So thank you, everyone, for listening to my random ramble today. But I do think it is ultimately related to everything, because this attitude is so poisonous, and it poisons the self, and it also poisons relationships with others. Like, this person just sounds completely insufferable. So watch yourself also. Like, maybe you're the person who judges people like this. And if you're listening to this podcast, like, I'm going to assume you probably aren't. But notice when you notice yourself judging other people, and for what. Because often when we judge other people about things like this, it's the stuff that we are afraid to admit that we're judging about ourselves. So I'm just going to leave that there, my friends. I'm back on Instagram, Sabrina M. Scott on Instagram. Say hello. Of course, my website is sabrinamscott.com. And you can send me an email at ceo@sabrinamscott.com. If you like this podcast, please share with a friend. Please leave a happy review. And do not leave a grumpy review unless you would like me to roast you. Which is like sometimes fun, but also sometimes not fun. So anyway, if you don't like it, just don't listen, my friends. It's not that fucking difficult. But if you do love the podcast, I appreciate all of your kind words, and I appreciate the positive 5-star reviews, and I also appreciate the shares. All right, friends, have a wonderful rest of your day. Much love, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.